The moment was surreal. I stood at the center of the grand conference hall, surrounded by the most powerful figures in the business world. The air buzzed with excitement, camera flashes flickering like lightning across the massive stage. The Golden Entrepreneur of the Year trophy felt heavy in my hands, but not as heavy as the weight of the victory I had just achieved. This wasn't just an award. It was proof. Proof that I had outsmarted, outworked, and outmaneuvered the man who had stolen everything from me. My father. I let my gaze scan the room, my heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and anticipation. Hundreds of industry leaders, investors, and journalists sat in neat rows, their eyes locked onto me. They saw a young entrepreneur who had defied the odds, someone who had built an empire from the ground up. But I was looking for only one person. And then I found him. Henry Carter. My father sat slumped in the back of the room, barely recognizable as the powerful businessman he had once been. His perfectly tailored suits had been replaced by a wrinkled, poorly fitted jacket. His once commanding posture was now hunched, his fingers gripping the armrest of his chair like he was trying to steady himself. His eyes, once sharp and full of arrogance, were hollow. I knew what he was thinking. This should have been his moment. He had spent decades building a name for himself. He had ruled the tech industry with ruthless efficiency, crushing competitors and controlling the market with an iron grip. He had always believed he was untouchable. Until I came along. I allowed myself a slow, deliberate smile. He knew what I had done to him. The irony was almost poetic. 1 year ago, he sat where I am standing now. 1 year ago, he was the one receiving the accolades, the praise, the headlines. But today, the world saw him for what he truly was, a fraud. I stepped forward to the microphone, the thunderous applause fading into a heavy silence. I took a breath, savoring the moment. I want to thank everyone who believed in me, who supported me when the odds were against me. My voice was calm, confident. But my eyes remained locked on my father. This award is for the people who stayed true, who didn't let greed define them. A subtle shift ran through the crowd. The words weren't direct, but people understood. They knew the history between Henry Carter and me. They knew the betrayal, the lawsuit, the scandal. And now, they knew who had won. My father looked away. Good. Let him feel it. I continued, letting my voice grow sharper. This journey wasn't easy. Some people believe that stealing someone's idea is enough to guarantee success. But the truth is, ideas don't make a company great. The people behind them do. My father flinched. His hands clenched into fists. I almost laughed. This was nothing compared to what he had done to me. I turned back to the crowd, my expression softening. I built next-gen tech from the ground up with integrity, with passion, and with the right people by my side. And that's why we're here today. A standing ovation erupted through the hall. The sound was deafening. I gave a final nod and stepped back, allowing the moment to sink in. This wasn't just a business award. This was my revenge. As I walked off the stage, I glanced back one last time. My father was still in his seat, shoulders hunched, a defeated man among giants. And then it hit me, this wasn't just his failure. This was the moment Henry Carter truly understood what he had lost. Not just his company. Not just his reputation. He had lost me. And he would never get any of it back. Shape. That was the end of his empire. But to truly understand what led us here, we need to go back. To the day he stole from me. A year before my victory, before the flashing cameras and roaring applause, I was just a hopeful entrepreneur with a dream. I had spent years developing Vision AI, an artificial intelligence system designed to revolutionize business management. It wasn't just another productivity tool, it was the future. Vision AI could predict market trends, optimize workflow, and enhance decision-making with unparalleled accuracy. It was smarter, faster, and more adaptable than anything on the market. I knew I had something special. But I also knew I needed help. Funding a startup wasn't easy, especially for a young entrepreneur with no corporate backing. I had the skills, the vision, and the drive, but without investors, Vision AI would never make it past the prototype stage. And that's where my father came in. Henry Carter wasn't just my father. He was a legend in the business world. A self-made billionaire, the CEO of Carter Innovations, a company known for investing in groundbreaking technology. If anyone could help me bring Vision AI to life, it was him. The day I presented my idea to him, I felt nervous but excited. I had rehearsed my pitch 100 times, refining every word, making sure my numbers were solid. I walked into his high-rise office, my business plan tucked under my arm, and found him sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, flipping through stock reports. He barely looked up as I entered. "You wanted a meeting?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I have something you'll want to see." I placed the documents on his desk and began my pitch. I explained how Vision AI could transform businesses, how its predictive algorithms could give companies an unbeatable edge. I talked about the potential market, the scalability, the return on investment. For the first time in the conversation, he leaned forward, flipping through the proposal with growing interest. His eyes narrowed as he read through the software's capabilities. "This is impressive," he admitted. "You really put in the work." I grinned. "I have. And with the right funding, this could dominate the market." He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping against the wood. "So what do you need?" "An initial investment. And a strategic partner. Someone with experience, connections." "Me," he finished. I nodded. "Yes. I want you to invest in Vision AI and help me take it to the next level. We could launch together." There was a long silence. Then, he smiled, a slow, calculating smile. "Leave the documents with me," he said. "Let me review everything, and we'll talk about next steps." I felt a rush of relief. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. As I left his office that day, I thought I had secured a powerful ally. I had no idea I had just handed my dream to a thief. Shape. 2 months passed. I waited anxiously for my father's decision. I followed up several times, but he kept telling me he needed more time to evaluate the proposal. Then, one morning, I woke up to a text from a friend. "Did you see the news? Your dad just launched a new AI business. Looks just like your idea." My stomach dropped. I scrambled out of bed, grabbed my laptop, and typed Henry Carter AI into the search bar. And there it was. Carter AI. A brand new artificial intelligence platform that promised to redefine business management. A cutting-edge software that sounded identical to Vision AI. I clicked on the press release, my hands shaking as I read. Henry Carter, CEO of Carter Innovations, has unveiled Carter AI, a revolutionary business assistant powered by artificial intelligence. Designed to predict market trends, optimize workflow, and enhance decision-making, Carter AI is set to dominate the industry. I couldn't breathe. He stole everything. The software, the marketing strategy, even the language from my proposal. And the worst part? Everyone believed it was his. The press hailed him as a visionary. Investors poured money into Carter AI. The business world was buzzing about Henry Carter's latest innovation, my innovation. I felt sick. I grabbed my phone and called him. The moment he answered, I didn't even let him speak. "You stole my idea," I hissed. A pause. Then, a slow, amused chuckle. Now. Stole is a strong word." I clenched my jaw. "I gave you my business plan in confidence. And now you're passing it off as yours." He sighed. "Listen, son. Business isn't just about ideas. It's about execution. And you? You weren't ready. You didn't have the resources, the network, the experience. I did what had to be done." My hands trembled with rage. "You didn't even offer to work with me. You just took it. And now it's going to be huge," he said, completely unfazed. "Carter AI is already attracting investors. It's a billion-dollar opportunity. You should be happy, it's your idea, after all." My vision blurred with fury. Happy? He expected me to be happy that he had stolen my dream and left me with nothing? "I'm going to make you regret this," I said, my voice shaking. He chuckled again. "What can you do? I own the patents now. I own the investors. I own the market." The arrogance in his voice made my skin crawl. He truly believed I was powerless. That I would just roll over and accept this. That was the moment I made a vow. He thought he had won. But I was going to make sure he lost everything. Shape. 4 days. I felt like I was drowning in anger and betrayal. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The headlines, the social media posts, the business articles, everywhere I looked, it was my father being praised for my work. I had always admired him, even when he was ruthless in business. But I had never imagined he would do this to his own son. I had two choices. Give up. Accept that he had beaten me. Move on with my life and find a different path. Fight back. And I wasn't about to let him win. I didn't have investors. I didn't have resources. But I had something far more dangerous, a reason for revenge. So I made my decision. I was going to build something better than Carter AI. I was going to outsmart him, outwork him, and destroy his company from the inside out. If he thought he had stolen my future, he was wrong. Because now, I was coming for his. I spent the next few weeks in a haze of anger, frustration, and planning. My father had stolen Vision AI, renamed it Carter AI, and launched it as his own. Every time I saw an article praising his brilliant innovation, I wanted to scream. But I had already made my choice. I wasn't going to let him win. If he thought I was going to sit back and watch while he took everything from me, he was wrong. I was going to fight back. But I couldn't do it with just raw emotion. I needed a plan. A strategy that would hit him where it hurt the most. I couldn't take on my father alone. Carter Innovations was a powerhouse, and Carter AI already had millions in investment funding. If I wanted to compete, I needed the best minds on my side. So I made a list of every tech genius, software engineer, and business strategist I had ever met. People who were brilliant but undervalued, the ones overlooked by corporate giants like my father's company. I started with Ethan Cole, a software engineer I had worked with in college. Ethan was a programming prodigy, but he hated the rigid corporate structure of big tech firms. He had once told me, "I'd rather build something game-changing from scratch than be another cog in the machine." When I called him and explained what happened, his response was immediate. "I'm in." Next was Sarah Lynn, a marketing strategist who had a reputation for turning startups into household names. She was sharp, ruthless, and exactly what I needed. She listened to my pitch and then said, "So, let me get this straight. Your father stole your idea, made millions off it, and now you want to launch a rival company just to destroy him?" "Pretty much." She laughed. "I love it. Count me in." One by one, I assembled a small but powerful team, the best minds in tech, marketing, and business. They weren't just employees, they were people who believed in me. People who wanted to take down Carter AI just as much as I did. I knew we needed more than just a good idea to beat Carter AI. We needed a brand that stood for something more than just business. That's how Next Gen Tech was born. The idea was simple. If my father wanted to steal the past, I would own the future. While Carter AI was designed for corporations and large-scale businesses, Next Gen Tech would focus on small businesses, entrepreneurs, and independent creators. It would be faster, smarter, and more affordable than Carter AI. And most importantly, it would be better. Once we had our company name, we needed a strategy. My father had the money, the reputation, and the connections. But I had an advantage he didn't. I knew exactly how his company worked. I had spent years watching my father build his empire. I knew his strengths. But more importantly, I knew his weaknesses. Step 1. Expose Carter AI's flaws. I started by analyzing Carter AI's system. I got my hands on a copy, an early version that had been released to beta testers. And within 2 weeks, Ethan had already found security vulnerabilities that could be exploited. We didn't need to hack into Carter AI or do anything illegal. All we had to do was wait for it to fail, and be ready to strike when it did. Step 2. Launch Next Gen Tech at the perfect moment. Instead of rushing to compete, we took our time perfecting our software. We worked day and night, testing, improving, and adding features that Carter AI didn't have. Then, we waited. We knew my father would get cocky. He always did. And when he slipped up, we would be ready. Shape. 3 months later, the moment finally came. Carter AI had launched to massive success, but as Ethan had predicted, the system had flaws. Businesses that relied on Carter AI were experiencing glitches, data processing errors, and even security breaches. The complaints started small, just a few frustrated users on social media. Then, one of Carter AI's biggest clients, a Fortune 500 company, publicly announced that they were experiencing major security issues with the software. Within 24 hours, Carter I's reputation was in free fall. That's when we made our move. Next Gen Tech officially launched with a powerful message. Tired of AI software that fails when you need it the most? Meet the future, Next Gen Tech. Reliable. Secure. Built for you. Sarah worked her marketing magic, making sure every frustrated Carter AI user saw our ads. We targeted every company, every entrepreneur, and every small business that had been burned by my father's software. And the results? It was an instant hit. Customers who had abandoned Carter AI were flocking to us, desperate for a better alternative. Investors who had ignored me months ago were suddenly interested in funding Next Gen Tech. We were taking over. Shape. A week after our launch, my father called me. I stared at the screen, his name flashing in bold letters. I knew exactly why he was calling. I let the phone ring twice before answering. "Surprised to hear from you," I said casually. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was cold. "You think this is a game?" I smiled. "No. This is business. Isn't that what you always taught me?" Silence. Then, a quiet chuckle. "You really think you can beat me?" "I don't think," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I know." More silence. Then, his tone darkened. "You have no idea who you're messing with." I laughed. "Oh, I do. That's why I know exactly how this ends." Another pause. This time, I could hear the frustration in his breathing. "We'll see about that," he finally muttered before hanging up. I set my phone down, my heart pounding. I knew my father wasn't going to back down. He would fight, he would scheme, and he would try to take me down. But I was ready. This was just the beginning. And by the time I was done, he wouldn't just lose the company. He would lose everything. The moment my father hung up the phone, I knew the real war was about to begin. Carter AI was failing, and he knew it. My success wasn't just a business problem for him. It was personal. He had stolen my idea, expecting me to sit back and accept it. Instead, I had built something better, something that was actively tearing his empire apart. And if there was one thing I knew about Richard Carter, it was that he never accepted defeat gracefully. Shape. 2 days later, the first blow landed. Next Gen Tech had been gaining momentum, but suddenly, we were hit with a lawsuit. The claim? Patent infringement and intellectual property theft. My father was accusing me of stealing my own idea. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. I called my lawyer, a sharp-witted corporate attorney named Julia Morgan, and asked her what she thought. She sighed. "This is classic corporate intimidation. He doesn't expect to win, he just wants to slow you down, drain your resources, and make investors nervous." She was right. The moment news of the lawsuit hit the media, our investors started hesitating. Some pulled out entirely, afraid of being caught in a legal battle. It was a calculated move, classic Richard Carter. I should have expected it. But if my father thought he could scare me off, he was about to learn something new. I didn't break that easily. Shape. Instead of backing down, we doubled down. Public relations strike. Sarah Lynn, my marketing director, launched a full-blown PR campaign. Next Gen Tech isn't just a business, it's a movement. While others focus on greed and control, we focus on innovation and empowerment. We painted my father's lawsuit for what it was, a desperate attempt to crush competition. Tech superiority. Ethan and the engineering team worked day and night, releasing a major software update. It made Next Gen Tech even more advanced, faster, more intuitive, and completely unique. Even if my father's lawsuit dragged on, the differences between our platforms would be undeniable. Exposing Carter AI's flaws. Behind the scenes, we fed tech journalists and cybersecurity analysts information about Carter AI's ongoing failures. Soon, news articles started popping up. Is Carter AI doomed? Major clients report software failures. Next Gen Tech versus Carter AI, who will win the AI war? By the end of the week, the lawsuit was no longer my problem, it was my father's. Shape. A week later, I received a message from my father's assistant. "Richard Carter wants a meeting." I knew it was a trap, but I agreed. I wanted to see the look on his face when he realized he was losing. We met in a private suite at the top of the Carter Innovations building. When I walked in, he was already seated, sipping a glass of whiskey. He looked calm, too calm. I took the seat across from him and waited. Finally, he spoke. "You've made quite a mess." I smirked. "I'd say I've made quite an impact." He set his glass down, studying me. "You think you've won?" "Not yet," I admitted. "But I will." His expression hardened. "I made you, Alex. Everything you know, everything you've built, it's because of me. And you think you can take me down?" I leaned forward. "I don't think, Dad. I know." His jaw tightened. Then, he slid a folder across the table. I opened it, and felt my stomach drop. Inside were detailed reports on every investor, partner, and employee at NextGen Tech. Notes on their financials, weaknesses, personal lives. He had been digging into everyone connected to me. "Business is war," he said quietly. "And in war, you don't just attack your enemies. You destroy everything they love." I closed the folder, forcing myself to stay calm. He smirked. "Still think you can beat me?" I met his gaze. "I don't just think it. I'm counting on it." Then, I stood up and walked out. I had entered that room expecting a fight. What I didn't expect was a warning. And now, I knew what I had to do. If my father wanted war, I was about to give him one. I walked out of my father's office with the folder in hand, my mind racing. He wasn't just fighting me, he was preparing to destroy everyone around me. If I didn't act fast, my team, my company, and everything I had built would be crushed. But he had made a mistake. By revealing his strategy, he had given me something powerful. Time to strike back. Shape. I gathered my executive team, Ethan, Sarah, and Julia, at our office that night. I tossed the folder onto the table. "This is what we're up against." Ethan flipped through the pages, his eyes widening. "He's digging into our entire team." I nodded. "He's looking for weaknesses. Leverage. Anything he can use to make them turn on us or leave." Julia frowned. "This isn't just corporate warfare. This is personal. He's trying to scare us." Sarah smirked. "Good. That means we're winning." I admired her confidence, but I wasn't taking any chances. We need to protect our people first. Then, we go on the offensive. Shape. We moved quickly. Locking down security, Ethan reinforced our cybersecurity. We encrypted sensitive files, secured employee data, and set up alerts for any suspicious activity. If my father tried to hack us, he'd hit a wall. Preemptive damage control. Sarah crafted a confidentiality agreement for all employees. Not only did it legally protect us, but it also reassured them that we were aware of threats and taking action. Buying loyalty, Julia suggested something bold. We offered key employees bonuses and stock options to ensure they wouldn't be tempted by any offers from Carter Innovations. Investor transparency. Instead of letting my father spread rumors, we met with our investors personally, addressing concerns and proving we were stronger than ever. By the end of the week, we had shut down every possible attack before it could happen. Now that we had secured our defenses, it was time to hit back. My father's biggest weakness? His ego. He thought he was untouchable. I was about to prove him wrong. We had already exposed Carter I's security flaws to the media. But this time, we went deeper. Ethan's team analyzed Carter I's entire system, identifying hidden vulnerabilities. Then, we leaked that information to top cybersecurity firms. Within days, Carter AI was under fire. Major data breach concerns at Carter AI, our clients at risk. Fortune 500 companies reconsider contracts amid security fears. Investors started pulling out. Clients demanded answers. My father's empire was cracking. I made a list of Carter I's top engineers and executives, the ones who were unhappy, undervalued, or looking for something better. Sarah worked her magic, reaching out discreetly. Within 2 weeks, 5 of my father's key employees left Carter AI and joined NextGen Tech. Among them, his head of AI development. It was a direct hit. Through one of our new hires, we discovered something huge. Carter AI had been lying about its financials. They had exaggerated profits to keep investors happy. If this got out, it could destroy their stock value. So, we leaked it. By the time the media picked it up, it was too late to contain. Carter AI under investigation for financial fraud. Stock prices plummet as investors panic. Carter AI was burning. Shape. The night the news broke, my father called me. His voice was calm, but I could hear the rage beneath it. You think you've won? I smiled, leaning back in my chair. I don't think, Dad. I know. There was silence on the line. Then, a quiet chuckle. You're more like me than you realize. That made me pause. I wasn't like him. He had stolen from me, betrayed me, and tried to ruin my life. I had only taken back what was mine. This isn't over, he said finally. I sighed. No, Dad. For you, it is. And I hung up. Carter AI was finished. My father was bankrupt. And everything he had tried to steal from me? Now, it belonged to me. The war was over. Carter AI had collapsed under the weight of its own lies, and my father's empire was in ruins. Everything he built, everything he stole from me, was gone. But I wasn't celebrating just yet. Because when a man like Richard Carter loses, he doesn't disappear quietly. Shape. The final blow came when Carter AI's board of directors held an emergency meeting. The scandal surrounding their financial fraud had triggered an SEC investigation, and investors were in full panic mode. Stock prices had plummeted, and major clients were cutting ties. They needed someone to blame. And they chose the man at the top. My father was removed as CEO. The headlines were brutal. Richard Carter ousted from his own company amid scandal. The rise and fall of Carter AI, a cautionary tale of greed. I watched the news unfold from my office, feeling a strange mix of emotions. For so long, I had dreamed of this moment, of taking back what was mine, of making him pay. And now that it had happened, it felt empty. Shape. A week later, I got a call. It was from his lawyer. Mr. Carter wants to meet with you. I almost said no. What was left to talk about? But something in me needed to see him, to see what defeat looked like on the man who once thought he was invincible. So, I agreed. We met at a small, dimly lit bar in the city. Not an office. Not a boardroom. Just a regular place where regular men drank to forget their problems. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth with a whiskey in front of him. For the first time in my life, he looked tired. His once perfect suit was slightly wrinkled, and there was a faint shadow of stubble on his face. I sat across from him, waiting for him to speak. Finally, he sighed. So, what now? You going to take a victory lap? I didn't answer. He smirked, shaking his head. You really did it. You took everything from me. No, I said quietly. You took everything from yourself. He looked at me then, his eyes sharp despite his worn-down appearance. You think you're better than me? He asked. I held his gaze. I think I learned from your mistakes. He chuckled bitterly. You don't get it, do you? You won because you're just like me. That hit harder than I expected. Was he right? Had I become the very thing I swore to destroy? I clenched my jaw. I didn't steal from my own son. I didn't betray the people who trusted me. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. And yet, you used every dirty trick in the book to take me down. I didn't deny it. Because he wasn't wrong. In the end, I had fought fire with fire. And I had won. Shape. He took a slow sip of his whiskey before speaking again. I need a job. I almost laughed. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? I stared at him. The mighty Richard Carter, once one of the most powerful men in the industry, was now asking his son for a job. Not because he wanted redemption. Not because he had changed. But because he had nowhere else to go. And for the first time, I saw it. He wasn't a monster. He was just a broken man who had lost everything. I could have said no. I could have walked away and left him to rot in his own failure. But instead, I leaned forward, looking him in the eye. You can work for me, I said. But you'll start at the bottom. His jaw tightened. You want me to be your employee? I smirked. That's what happens when you lose, Dad. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. All right, Alex. You win. He extended his hand. I hesitated for only a second before shaking it. I wasn't giving him back his power. I was making sure he never had it again. Shape. Weeks passed. Carter AI was no more. Next-gen tech was thriving. And Richard Carter? He was just another employee in my company. No power. No influence. Just another man punching the clock. Some people thought I was crazy for hiring him. But I knew better. The best way to destroy a man like my father wasn't to ruin him. It was to make him watch me succeed. And that was a victory I would savor for the rest of my life. Months passed, and the dust settled. Carter AI was officially gone. Its remaining assets were sold off, and the once mighty company became nothing more than a cautionary tale in business textbooks. A lesson on greed, arrogance, and betrayal. Next-gen tech, on the other hand, was stronger than ever. We had secured major contracts, attracted new investors, and cemented ourselves as the industry leader. The company my father had tried to destroy was now the one running the market. And my father? He was living in the ruins of his own choices. Shape. Richard Carter, once a titan of industry, now worked in a small office on the lower floors of my company. He wasn't a decision maker. He wasn't a leader. He was just an employee. At first, people whispered when they saw him. Employees who once feared him now ignored him. Some even pitied him. But he showed up to work every day, dressed in a crisp suit as if clinging to a version of himself that no longer existed. He kept his head down, did his job, and stayed out of my way. That was fine with me. I had won. Shape. One evening, after a long day, I was in my office when there was a knock at the door. It was my father. I leaned back in my chair. Something wrong? He hesitated. Then, to my surprise, he sat down across from me. For a long time, he just looked at me. Finally, he spoke. You were right. I frowned. About what? His jaw tensed. About everything. That caught me off guard. He sighed. I spent my whole life thinking power was the only thing that mattered. That winning meant taking. That control meant respect. He shook his head. But all I ever did was make enemies. And in the end, I lost everything. I studied him carefully. Are you expecting sympathy? No, he let out a bitter chuckle. I'm expecting you to enjoy this moment. I didn't reply. Because he wasn't wrong. There was satisfaction in seeing him finally admit his failures. But there was also something else. For the first time, he looked human to me. Not the ruthless businessman who had stolen from his own son. Not the man who tried to crush me at every turn. Just an old man who had nothing left. Shape. He stood up to leave, then hesitated. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quietly. But for what it's worth, I am sorry. I didn't say anything as he walked out of my office. Because honestly, I wasn't sure how I felt. Hate is easy. But what happens when the villain of your life stops being a villain? When he's just a man? Shape. A year later, next-gen tech had expanded globally. I was no longer just the son of Richard Carter. I was something more. I had built my own empire. And I had done it on my terms. My father had tried to steal my dream. But in the end, all he had done was teach me how to fight for it. I didn't need revenge anymore. Because success? That was the best revenge of all.